everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Bible Safari. Before we get into this week's story, let's have a quick recap. Last week, we learned about Hannah and Elkanah and how God answered Hannah's prayers by blessing them with a beautiful baby boy named Samuel. Now, Samuel grew up to be a great and honorable priest, but the people of Israel, like many other nations, wanted a king, so God appointed King Saul. Now, this week's story is a story about bravery and courage. A story about a young shepherd boy who became a great warrior. Yes, you've guessed it, it's the story of David and Goliath. Now, David was the youngest of 8 sons, and God had chosen David to be the king over Israel after King Saul. Israel was in the midst of a great war against a fierce army called the Philistines. The Philistines had a champion, a great giant named Goliath, who was almost 3 meters tall. This is almost as large as an African elephant. Can you guys imagine that? For 40 days, every evening and every morning, Goliath challenged the Israelites, saying, "Choose your best warrior. If I kill him, you will become our slaves. But if he kills me, we will become your slaves." But the Israelites were terrified. No one dared to challenge the giant. Now, one morning when David was attending to the sheep like he normally did, his father Jesse came to him and sent him with food to check on his older brothers who were serving in King Saul's army. When David arrived, he went straight to his brothers. At that very moment, Goliath began his usual boasting, challenging the Israelites. David was shocked at what he had heard. He was so angry at the mean things Goliath was saying about God and about the Israelites. David couldn't understand why the Israelites had such fear and why they were so scared to challenge this giant. David knew that God was stronger than Goliath, and he had confidence that God was going to help the Israelites defeat this giant. Since no other Israelite soldier was brave enough or had the courage to challenge Goliath, David told King Saul that he would fight this battle. King Saul doubted and even laughed at David, as he was just a small shepherd boy, probably half the size of Goliath. But David was brave, and he knew that God would help him. He had no sword, he had no shield, he didn't even have armor, but what he did have was a sling. As Goliath came towards David, David ran, putting a stone in the sling and shooting the stone straight towards the giant. The stone landed straight on the giant's forehead, bringing him to the ground. What an awesome story, guys. And as we admire David's courage and bravery, we also need to remember that it was God who enabled David to defeat Goliath. The same God that helped David is with us each and every single day. So when we're feeling fearful or scared, we can trust that just like how God enabled David to overcome Goliath, God can also help us overcome our fears. So the memory verse of today is Deuteronomy 31, verse 6, which says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you or forsake you."